Arman placed his phone beside the dinner plate and said he had transferred half the expenses already. I nodded, but my body still carried the same tired feeling. The electricity and internet bills were already paid and neatly checked off in my notes app. Still, my thoughts kept circling like unfinished chores. I opened the refrigerator while the apartment stayed quiet around me. Myra's milk was almost empty, and my mind had already moved into tomorrow morning. In the living room, Mira laughed while Armen replayed the same funny clip again. I watched them quietly, carrying tomorrow's plans inside my head. My name is Clara, and lately we have tried dividing family expenses more fairly. The numbers felt lighter, but my mind still carried everything alone. Breakfast was cooking while my mind moved elsewhere. I kept thinking about Myra's lunchbox, the water bill, and whether the rice would last another week. Arman washed the dishes before work and said our finances finally felt easier. I smiled back, even though I already felt tired before the day fully started. After a while, I noticed something I had never named before. We shared the money, but most of the rememberings still stayed with me. I noticed when the soap was almost empty, and remembered school payment dates first. Even dinner menus became quiet calculations in my head. No one asked me to carry all of it. Maybe that was why it felt difficult to explain, since everything looked small from the outside. That afternoon, I finally sat down after cleaning the house. For a moment, everything felt still, until I remembered the kitchen gas was almost finished. I had not even finished resting, but my thoughts were already working again. For the first time in a long while, I wondered when I had last felt completely still. At first, I thought I was simply worrying too much about the house. I kept telling myself to relax and stop thinking ahead. The next evening, we reviewed our monthly budget together. Arman focused on the numbers while my mind wandered to everything still missing. I kept thinking about Myra's birthday gift, next semester's sports uniform, and even medicine for a flu that had not happened yet. That was when I admitted something uncomfortable. I was not only carrying expenses, but also anticipating every possible situation before it arrived. Over time, I felt like an alarm that never fully turned off. Even quiet moments left part of my mind awake and preparing ahead. One night, Armand smiled and said the bills finally felt balanced. I smiled back while my thoughts had already moved to the weekend grocery list. That was when I understood something simple. Not every burden arrives as money. Some live quietly inside the mind without anyone noticing. Sunday afternoons felt slower in our house. Mira colored on the floor while Armin repaired a chair, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. I tried to sit with them quietly, but my mind drifted back to the unpaid laundry bill waiting later that week. Without noticing, I reached for my phone and opened the banking app automatically. Even quiet evenings stayed tied to unfinished responsibilities. That was when I realized how divided I had become. My body stayed with my family while my thoughts moved through endless lists and reminders. Armin handed me a cup of warm tea that night. It was kind, but my mind was still calculating the remaining money for the week. Slowly, the house stopped feeling restful. Every corner reminded me of something unfinished instead of somewhere peaceful to breathe. The hardest part was how invisible the exhaustion looked. Nothing seemed broken inside our home, so no one else fully noticed it. From the outside, everything still looked steady. Dinner and small jokes continued, but our mind never fully stopped counting what tomorrow needed. Inside our thoughts, a quiet list kept moving. Milk, bills, transfers for next week. Even calm moments carried reminders she rarely put down. One evening, Mira asked to watch a movie together while Armen grabbed snacks casually. She quietly wondered how long those small things would need to last. When she noticed herself counting again, sadness arrived quietly. She missed the version of herself that could rest without keeping score. Later that night, the house became quiet. Mira slept, Arman rested on the sofa, and she stayed awake checking small expenses from the day. Nothing was truly wrong. There was no emergency, yet her body moved as if it had forgotten how to fully relax. Slowly, she realized the exhaustion was not from doing too much, but from carrying too many reminders alone. Morning light filled the dining room while Mira worked on her homework. I smiled, thinking it was just another simple school assignment. Then Mira casually said, "Mama must be tired all the time." My hand stopped halfway above the cup before I realized it. I softly asked why she thought that. Mira answered immediately, as if the reason had always been obvious to her. Because Mama keeps thinking about everything. The sentence was simple, but it stayed with me longer than I expected. Myra returned to her assignment while I stayed still beside my cooling tea. The morning suddenly felt much quieter than before. I realized the weight I carried was never truly invisible. Even a child could notice how busy my mind always seemed. I was not exhausted only because things needed to be done. I was tired because every unfinished detail stayed living inside my head. I used to believe fairness was simple. If we split the bills evenly, the pressure should feel lighter too. But some work never appears on paper. Money could be counted and divided, but reminders and daily worries stayed in one place. I carried them before anyone noticed them. Arman was never careless. Whenever I asked for help, he responded kindly, but I had become too used to thinking ahead first. Somewhere along the way, I became the fastest one in the house. Faster at remembering and worrying before problems even arrived. We never talked about the pattern. Life continued around it until the quiet routine started making me feel alone. That night, I sat alone with the shopping list, wondering why my mind never seemed to rest. The kitchen silence felt unusually loud. Maybe the answer was simple. I kept carrying everything because deep down, I believed no one else would continue if I stopped. After Mira fell asleep, the house became quiet again. I sat across from Arman, realizing the silence felt more important than the numbers. I quietly told him that even though we shared the bills, my thoughts never stopped moving. Every finished task only made room for another. Arman stayed quiet for a moment before answering. He was not trying to defend himself, only understand something he had never fully seen. I started naming the small things I carried every day. Grocery stock, Myra's schedule, unexpected expenses. Together, they never really left my mind. Arman slowly admitted he never realized how many quiet decisions filled my day. Hearing that somehow made the room feel lighter. I smiled and admitted I had pretended everything was manageable for too long. Saying it out loud slowly started to feel relieving. Nothing dramatic changed that night. But for the first time, the weight no longer felt completely invisible between us. The next morning felt quieter inside my head. Nothing dramatic changed, but the house no longer felt like it depended entirely on me. Arman checked the kitchen shelves before work and typed grocery notes into his phone without asking me first. I quietly watched the habit begin to change. That evening, he added Myra's school payment reminder into his own calendar. It was small, yet my mind suddenly felt less crowded. I started stopping myself from automatically taking over every task. Letting go still felt unfamiliar, but I was learning. Slowly, I understood something new. A home does not stay safe because one person stays alert all the time. Mira started seeing us cook together more often now. Some small things still slipped through, but life continued gently anyway. That night, I laughed quietly while clearing the dinner table. It had been a long time since silence felt this comforting. I used to think fairness at home was simple. But even after bills and chores were shared, some responsibilities never really left my mind. A healthy home may not be pressure-free. Maybe it is simply a place where exhaustion no longer stays invisible or unspoken. Sometimes the calmest person is the one remembering everything for everyone else. Carrying those quiet thoughts can become its own kind of tiredness. Over time, I realize many families probably carry conversations like this in silence. Daily life moves too fast to notice the hidden weight. These days, I pay closer attention to the things people carry quietly. Sometimes the heaviest mental load is the one nobody realizes is there.